going back to when I first thought you'd be a really interesting guest on the podcast, I can't remember what event it was. I was trying to think of what it was. It might be Aston, it might be something else, but I saw you at the old library, and I remember you were talking about, I remember you having strong opinions, let's say, on aggregation and sort of catastrophic risk. So I was like, yeah, I got to have him on to talk about this. So is the problem as big as everyone thinks it is? Is it smaller? What can we do about it? Let's just anything you want to throw out there on cat risk.
Sure. This is the biggest problem I have right now with cyber in the cyber insurance world is that big modeling firms need to sell these FUD to be able to sell their products. And by the way, I saw this for years in cybersecurity. Yeah. Like we get so much of that in cybersecurity that it's actually fun for me to see it happening in the insurance world as well. Because and by the way, I spend a lot of my time talking to modeling firms and looking at their models, trying to understand how they're doing things. And my biggest issue is, one, they never take into account actually technology details, both of the books that they're modeling against. So for example, I'm a carrier, I go to pick a modeling firm and I tell them, how does the aggregation risk for my book look like? They're not going to look at what technologies are actually used, which technologies have actually been exploited. They're not going to look at hosting providers and service distribution on the book. They're not going to look at the technology details that make technology resilient. And by the way, they also don't take into account technology evolution. And what I mean by that is, I've seen scenarios from modeling companies that say, oh, AWS disappears for 30 days. First of all, AWS isn't one thing. AWS is multi-region, high availability with lots of resilience and backups services. They're not going to disappear. All of AWS isn't going to disappear from one day to the other. It can be that a service in a region can go down for a couple of hours, sure, but it's not going to disappear from one day to the other. But let's say that we live in fantasy world and somehow AWS can disappear for 30 days from one day to the other. It's not a cyber insurance problem. You're not going to be able to get money out of your bank. You're not going to be able to have food in the supermarket. That's a government problem. That is not cyber insurance coverage problem. So, so this is the biggest issue I have right now. It all starts with, oh, it's going to be like a hurricane, or it's going to be like terrorism. And it's like, no, cyber is different. The technology is advancing year over year. There's more resilient technologies being built. Customers are leveraging technology like cloud more and more every single day. And none of these companies are taking any of these things into account. It's actually like what kick-started Coalition into going down the road of building its own aggregation model, which is something that, again, was built by my team with the actuarial team. It was exactly that. We just weren't happy with what we were seeing in the market. So yeah, that's my take on it.